Hey, thank you for tuning in to episode 1 of Chompin at the Bit podcast. On this episode, I'm going to touch on the NBA bubble, get you caught up on the action that's happening down in the Orlando bubble, and as well, we're going to look forward to the NFL season starting on Thursday. But I'll get more into the NFL later on in the episode. But I want to start off with Game 5 of the Celtics vs. Raptors series. As coming into tonight's action, the series was tied at 2. But the Raptors had won the previous 2 games after the Celtics won the first 2. So momentum was in Toronto's corner. But looking at Game 5, Jaylen Brown came out and he was great tonight. Last game, he couldn't buy a bucket until about the fourth quarter, where he hit a couple of threes. You could see his demeanor change, and that he wasn't as down on himself as he was in the early part of the game. And that translated over to tonight's game, where he scored 27 points in 37 minutes. He was attacking the rim. He hit some outside shots. He broke down the defense, made a couple plays up to other guys. He had a big dunk on OG and Anunoby in the first quarter. So he definitely had a bounce in his step that he carried with him through the rest of the game. The Celtics also got back to their calling card of great defense. I mean, it was great to watch. They were flying around the ball. They kept Lowry, Van Vliet out of the paint. Once again, they kept Siakam under control. Siakam has been a big disappointment in this series, because when the Raptors lost Kawhi Leonard, they were looking at Siakam to be the next guy to step up and lead them, and he just has not done that at all. I know when this series started, there were questions about, whether Siakam would be the best player on the court, or whether it'd be Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. But yeah, Siakam has not been good other than the last game. He was decent, but every game outside of that, there's a lot of times you don't even recognize that he's on the court, which has been a big problem for Toronto, because they need him to play well in order to beat the Celtics team. The Celtics team is a title contender. It'd be tough, but they have the weapons on offense to get it done, and they play great defense on the other end. So with the Celtics now up 3-2, the Raptors are going to have to, it's their season's on the line Wednesday night. If they lose, they go home. They win, force a Game 7. And when you get to a Game 7, anything can happen. So they're going to need Siakam to play better. They're going to need Lowry to step up. Lowry hasn't been consistent throughout this series, but he hasn't been as bad as Siakam. And Van Vliet as well, he's been up and down. As of right now, their consistent players have been Anunoby and Ibaka. But those aren't the 2 players that the Raptors want to rely on in order to move forward. They need to get production out of their top 3 guys, Siakam, Lowry, and Van Vliet, to kind of counteract Celtics' top 3 guys of Brown, Jason Tatum, and Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker has slowly started to assert himself in this series, as he's realized that Lowry and Van Vliet can't really guard him. So he gets to his spots. He's pulling up from three, and he's been kind of a headache, especially in the second half of these games. But yeah, so I'm expecting the Celtics to close that series out on Wednesday and get some rest, I believe, probably like a couple days before the Eastern Conference Finals start. But I expect them, like I said, to close it out Game 6 and make the conference finals for the second time in 3 years. But last year was actually the year where they were supposed to contend for a title, but the Kyrie Irving experiment like ran off the tracks, and this past offseason they let him go to Brooklyn and they brought in Kemba Walker, and that trade of superstars has been perfect for the Celtics, as Kemba Walker is a guy who he's always on the court. He's got a big smile on his face. He looks like he's having fun. He has no problem, giving the ball up to other guys who might be having a great night and still smiling about it. Last year, it looked like, Kyrie would let Tatum and Brown have their moments, but then there'd be times where he would just become ball dominant and try to do things on his own, which really hurt that team. But this team is more together and they're playing well. So yeah, if the Raptors can't figure it out for Game 6, their season's going to end. And, they've had a good season. Their best player from last year, Kawhi Leonard, leaves, goes to the Clippers. And they're still a top team in the East. Had a great record. And there were some experts who were picking them to beat the Celtics this series, which they still could because they're not out of it yet. But I'm just expecting the Celtics to close out Game 6. The other game that happened tonight was Game 3 between the Clippers and the Nuggets. And the Clippers won that game to take a 2-1 series lead. The biggest thing for the Clippers was they held Jamal Murray in check, which a lot of teams haven't been able to do because he's turned these playoffs into like a coming out party. But he really struggled tonight. You can thank Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Patrick Beverley, and also Montrezl Harrell, their big man who is athletic enough to guard the guards out on the perimeter. So yeah, they were able to keep him in check. Jokic had a great game for the Nuggets, but it wasn't enough to pull out the win there. The Clippers got a great performance from Kawhi and Paul George. That's their superstar duo. And if they can get both of them playing well on the same night, they are pretty tough to beat because they're both guys who do it both ends of the floor. They can both get you 25, 30 points on offense, and they can play lockdown defense on the other end. So, because of those two, to many experts, the Clippers are the favorite to win the title this year. I can say that I would agree with them, but I would say it's not going to be like a walk for them. It's going to be tough because even if they get past Denver this series, they'll have a tough matchup in the Western Conference Finals. And I think, based on the teams that are left in the East, they'll get a tough matchup in the NBA Finals as well if they were to make it there. So now for Game 4, which is also Wednesday night. This is also Wednesday night after the Celtics Raptors Game 6. Denver's gonna have to try to get Jamal Murray some open shots. I would suggest that they would probably maybe put the ball in Jokic's hand more at the top and run Murray off ball. That way he doesn't have to bring the ball up, kind of get the offense started or create for himself. Because against this Clipper team, that's tough. The easy way to attack them would be, have some back screen action to get guys open, get some guys slash into the hoop to penetrate the defense, create mismatches, and attack them that way. I mean, it's tough to get mismatches because a lot of their guys are interchangeable, but you have to be patient enough to find a matchup that works in your favor and then attack it to kind of get at the Clippers. If you come down and shoot, contested outside shots early in the shot clock, you're playing into their hands because they're a pretty good rebounding team as well. Between, Kawhi and his long arms, and George is a willing rebounder. So is Beverly, Patrick Beverly. Harrell's a great rebounder, and Zubats has great hands down low, and he's the guy that they don't talk about a lot, but he does a lot for that team. He does a lot of dirty work, and he rim protects for them. So yeah, we'll see how Game 4 goes, and we'll look back in on that series and see how that one's going. So those are the two games tonight with the bubble atmosphere. There's two games tomorrow night, and with that you have Bucks Heat Game 5, where the Heat are up 3-1 in the surprise of the playoffs so far. Most people thought the Bucks were going to win the series against the Heat, go on into the Eastern Conference Finals, probably win that series, as most experts thought the Bucks were a title contender. Some thought that they would win the title this year, as they have the Defensive Player of the Year and MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo on their team. But he's actually hurt right now, as he rolled his ankle in the last game, and he was seen leaving the arena with a walking boot and a pretty noticeable limp. So I'm not sure if he'll play in Game 5. But even if he does, I think this series is over. Because if you look at it, the Heat should have won Game 4, which would have made it a sweep. But Middleton did all he could for the Bucks to win Game 4, and they pulled out in overtime. And even Jimmy Butler, after the game, said that when Giannis got hurt, they kind of let up a little bit, which I'm not going to understand, but I don't see it happening 2 games in a row. So I think the Heat will close that out in Game 5, which if they do, and if my prediction with the Celtics closing out, you'll have Celtics Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. But we'll see if that happens, and we'll preview that on another episode. And then the nightcap for tomorrow night is Lakers Rockets Game 3. Right now that series is tied 1-1. So this game will be a momentum swinger, as Game 1 the Rockets came out, shot the lights out, and really confused the Lakers, and they took Game 1. Lakers made the adjustment in Game 2, as well as the Rockets didn't shoot as well in Game 2 as they did in Game 1. and the Lakers took advantage of those missed shots. They pounded the Rockets inside with AD in the paint. LeBron got some baskets at the hoop in the paint, got a couple of dunks, some easy layups, which then opened up his outside game. After getting a couple of dunks or whatever, he was more comfortable taking 3-point shots. He made a couple of them, and then, once he makes those shots out there, the team plays a little differently. They have a little more, bounce in their step, a lot more emotion in their game. The bench is more involved, so that's what happened in Game 2. Plus, Westbrook had a terrible game for the Rockets, which I don't expect to happen in Game 3. I think he'll come out. He'll be very aggressive because Westbrook is a very emotional player. And when, after a bad game, he usually comes out fired up the next game. And if he can make his mid-range shot, then you'll know he'll probably have a pretty good game. If he comes out Game 3 shooting from the perimeter and is bricking a lot of the shots, the Rockets will probably be in trouble. I'm going to say the Lakers take Game 3, but in no way do I think that this series goes any less than 6 games. Would not be shocked if it goes 7. Which, if it does, you never know what happens in the Game 7, so it's anybody's series. So that gets you caught up on playoff action right now. So I guess with some more bubble news. I believe that the NBA still hasn't had any positive tests in the bubble, so they're still doing really well with that. I know when they first announced the bubble atmosphere, I was worried that the game wouldn't, translate as well on TV without fans being there, creating that playoff atmosphere. But I gotta say that the NBA has done a great job with the virtual fans, and by making the bench area a little bigger, the players seem to be more involved in the game. So the players on the bench are up making noise. You actually get a lot of trash talk between players on the court and the bench, which brings like a little added intensity to each of these games. The announcers for the most part have been pretty good. The refs, I don't know, it seems like the refs kind of let the games be a little bit more physical this year than they have past years. I don't know if that's anything to do with the bubble. I don't know. But the games have been, great to watch. It's been like a coming out party for some of the younger guys in the league. Like Jamal Murray has been great. Tatum's been great. Donovan Mitchell is great. Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, Kawhi, Paul George. So, the NBA has like rising stars in their younger players, which is good. Because, LeBron's not going to be around forever. And, of course, they'll be looking to, like, the next guy to take the league and run with it for the next 10 years or so. Oh, Zion Williamson, of course. Got some exposure in the playoffs. Well, at least in the seeding games, they didn't actually make it into the playoffs, but yeah, it's been a good showcase for, like I said, young stars to kind of make a name for themselves. The coaching, like some of the, well, I can't say younger coaches, but some of the coaches that have been down in the bubble and in the playoffs now are being recognized as, for what they do. If you look at it, the teams that are left, there are some pretty good coaches left. You have, like Doc Rivers with the Clippers, Mike Malone with the Nuggets. You got, Frank Vogel with the Lakers, Mike D'Antoni with the Rockets, Brad Stevens, Nick Nurse, who won Coach of the Year for the Raptors, and Eric Spoelstra with the Heat. I mean, the Bucks have Mike Budenholzer, who's probably the weakest coach of the bunch, which is why after the Heat closed them out Game 5, I would not be shocked if he lost his job. There was just too much anticipation with this Bucks team for them to lose this way in the second round of the playoffs. Yeah, that's not going to look good for him. Like, I get it. Giannis is hurt now. But even before that, he was getting outclassed by Spoelstra. I mean, of course, I'm not going to put all the Bucks' failures on Budenholzer, because the makeup of the team, I have never been a fan of their team, because they rely a lot on Giannis, even though Giannis's offensive game is very flawed. He's not a great shooter, and when he takes to the hoop and he gets fouled a lot, he's not a great free throw shooter either. I mean, he's still really young, so he can develop, but right now his offensive game is very limited. I mean, he does make up for it defensively, as he won Defensive Player of the Year, because he's a great defender. He protects the rim. He has long arms, so he gets a lot of steals and pass deflections and all that. But yeah, they built that team around him with a lot of guys who haven't proven a lot in the playoffs, which is evident now as they're going up against a scrappy Heat team. And it just seemed like between the Heat being scrappy and the Bucks kind of going about this year as like the team of destiny that felt like they could just kind of show up and just dominate, and then once the Heat punched them in the mouth, they kind of didn't know what to do. So they've seen that they folded up, and the Heat have taken full advantage of it. So I'm expecting there to be a change in Milwaukee. I wouldn't be shocked if they brought him back, but yeah, I don't see that happening. And of course, there's been a few teams that have made the decision to let their coaches go. Well, their coach go. So, like every year, there's going to be job openings out there. Right now, we know the Sixers job is open, which will be... That's probably it's a good job, because you'll be going into it knowing that you have two young stars already. But with those two young stars, there are a lot of questions. So you got to make some decisions on that. It's still an attractive job, just a challenging job. You got the Pacer job that's open, where I feel like that's actually probably a better job than the Sixer job, because there's a lot of pressure in Philly to win now. Whereas in Indiana, I think there's a little leeway that if you're a consistent playoff team and, you show growth, you'll probably keep that job longer. Um, outside of those two, there's the Bulls job where, it's low expectations right now. It's a franchise kind of in transition as they've changed a lot of their front office personnel. But there's some young talent to work with. So if they bring the right coach in, that's a team that can, with the right move here or there, may be able to turn it around within a couple of years. There was the Brooklyn job until they signed Steve Nash. Now that is an interesting one because Steve Nash is going in there with a lot of expectations because you have Kevin Durant coming back from his Achilles injury next year. You have Kyrie coming back from his injury as well next year. And with those two, Nets fans are expecting championships. So you have to show success right away with that team. Those are the jobs I can think of right off the top of my head right now, but every year after the playoffs there's always a couple of other jobs that open up. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'll keep you up to date with any coaching changes and all that breaking news as it comes. So that's kind of everything going on with NBA and the bubble. And as I said in the intro, NFL starts Thursday, which I cannot wait because this NFL season I think is going to be, I don't want to say the most unpredictable, but I don't know. Something about this season, I feel like there's going to be a lot of, there's going to be some teams that you probably aren't expecting a lot from that may do better than you think. And there are some stacked teams that might flame out a little bit and be a little worse than you thought. But I'm excited for this season. I hope you guys are too. Like I said, probably tomorrow, Wednesday, I will do a season preview episode where I'll go through the divisions, come up with all the biggest news of each division in terms of players leaving, players coming in, give you my predictions for division winners and playoff teams, and I may even give you a Super Bowl prediction, but we'll see. So wherever you are listening to this, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can go on the Twitter page at Chompin Podcast. If you want me to, if you have any questions for your team, you can drop them down there. And in the preview show, I can go ahead and give you my prediction. If you want me to I don't know, let you know what your team could do to turn themselves into a contender this year, you can talk about that. If you just want me to, I don't know, give you an outlook for your team, you can put that down there as well. But yeah, definitely look forward to that episode because I'm ready for this season. As I said, I'm a Celtics fan. I'm also a Patriots fan. I know some of you listening might be rolling your eyes at that, but I'm from Boston, so I'm a Patriots fan. And I know I'm intrigued to see Cam Newton up there, see what he can do, as well as some other changes they've made, but save that for the preview show. And so I guess with that, it's a good place to end this show. But like I said, wherever you're listening, if you're on YouTube or Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, whatever, definitely, like, follow, or subscribe, whatever it is on the platform that you're listening to. Comment section, definitely tell me what you liked about this episode, what you didn't like, any questions, comments, whatever, drop it down there. Or like I said, on the Twitter page at Chompin Podcast. You message me topics you'd like me to cover, or kind of whatever. If you have a question about like an aspect of a sport or something that you don't understand, you put that in there. Because like I said, not just for hardcore sports fans. If you're a casual fan or just getting into sports, welcome you to listening. Hopefully I can let you know a little something about sport you may not know about. So, like I said, appreciate you listening, and definitely catch you on the next episode. All right.